Clock. And we have a quorum, and I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Tax Increment Financing and Investment Zone One Board of Directors meeting for December 11th, 2024. And first item, I'd like to recognize Bill Schuman for his years of service. The investment zone, he'll be rolling off of, I guess this is your last meeting, so thank you for all the time that you served. How many years? 12 years?
12 years.
Wow. Thank
Well,
you.
that doesn't include the years, just working around the edges with Wilson on it.
Yeah.
83, 84, 85.
Thank you for your service. Next item, public comments. No public comments. The next item is the minutes. So consider approval of the minutes from the meeting held on November 6th, 2024. Motion by Lester. Second by Brian. Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Next item is our regular agenda, receive current project updates, discuss possible future projects, including not limited to a review of current projects under construction, review projects and design, and review of future projects. David?
Good morning. Thank you, Bob. Got an early Christmas present for everybody this morning. We're keeping this one pretty short and sweet. But prepare yourself for the beginning next year. So we'll be going through every project like we normally do. So today we're just going to give you an update on our projects that are in construction, and we have a total of 6. Our North Outer Loop Phase 3 project, which is the one that's connecting from Windland Road over to I-35. That project's going really well. I believe everybody got a video from our last meeting. So you probably saw that. Jordan Foster is doing great out there, moving along quickly. They're about 50% complete and on schedule to complete by May of 2026. But if you recall, our last meeting, we also presented that we have a pretty major change order coming with that project based on the North Industrial Park Master Plan, which is a very good thing. We've got all that design complete and sent over to Jordan Foster, and we're working through the change order process with them now. We expect that's going to push that out to late fall, early winter of 2026 when we do that. Again, quite a bit of work. If you recall, about $3 million, and we're still working on the actual numbers. Expect to have that back hopefully in January to bring before the board, if late as February. So it's again, project moving along really good and right now on schedule. Our Santa Fe Community Market project just got kicked off. Our notice to proceed was November 12th. If you've driven past there on Avenue C, that project is, we've demoed quite a bit of stuff and we've started to do quite a bit of work. Our Wright Builder's doing a great job out there. But again, just getting started. As usual with the projects that we do in the downtown area, we're starting to find a few things. And that was, again, right by the railroad where Temple Feed was. So we've already hit one little unexpected item, which we've taken care of. But we found another one yesterday, which is BNSF or the railroad, whatever they were called back in those days. They used to do a bunch of creosote timber drainage structures. When we were doing the MLK project, we actually tried to video that. City people helped us out and took their underground video equipment down there, but we couldn't get through. So we're not real sure where it goes. We're going to do some drainage tests today to kind of see if it's active or not, because that's the only way we can figure it out. But just a heads up that we may end up doing some adjustments on that project and bring that back to this board as well.
That a potential environmental issue? I withdraw the question.
Yes. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Our East-West Gateway project, I'm sure most of you have driven past that coming into downtown. We are extremely pleased how that's turned out. The project's actually complete, and we have a few very, very minor punch list items with that one. If you recall, that was one of our projects we did in conjunction with TxDOT as well as Keep Temple Beautiful. So we had some grant dollars that came in with that. Obviously, when we were building that thing, it doesn't look like it does today, and public comments about it. I would hope, and when I was presenting that project to different groups, I would say, hey, just wait till we're finished and then judge it at the final product. And from my perspective anyway, we are extremely pleased with how that looks coming into our downtown area, headed to West Temple. Really, Emerson Construction did that job, and really pleased with how that turned out, and love that final product. And hopefully, and I'm sure it was, lights were still on this morning when you came through. We do have one slight adjustment on there that will cost no money to the project. The lighting contractor is actually switching out some of those lights because they didn't meet when we did our light tests out there in the dark. It didn't meet all of our requirements. It's plug and play. They literally just come out and they just plug them back in. So the contractor's already taken care of that. So when you saw it this morning, if you didn't see full light distribution, you will in January. Those are coming in January. No additional cost to the project, but love the way that looks. Really pleased with how that turned out.
Mr. Deckman has a question.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Deckman has a question online.
Hey, good morning, David. I just want to tell you guys, great job. We've been getting a lot of comments about that in planning. Tyler Richburg with KPA has shared us the spec sheet for that weathered steel. That we had complaints, well, it's rusty, and had to explain to him the product is designed to rust. And some folks have changed their tune once they understand the intent. And like you said, judge it when it's finished. So thanks. I think it looks great.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jason. And ironically, so it's a Core 10 type of product, and anybody that was, which many of you were here when we did the Pepper Creek Trail, the bridges that go over Pepper Creek are the same way. We got the same comments. Oh, you put steel out there, it's already rusted. You know, it's an architectural look. That's the way it's supposed to be, and it actually maintains better because you don't have to worry about it rusting, and that is the look from the beginning. So that was absolutely the intent from the beginning. And again, I'm extremely pleased how that one turned out. Our downtown city center.
The other thing on that one, we contracted to have the maintenance, I believe, for 1 year.
Yes,
It would be all good, mature.
yeah, that's a great point, Bob. One of the things that we've run into a little bit with the landscaping that we've done, beautification, and congratulate this board for doing that. We've actually started to see some of your sister cities follow that. They're seeing what Temple's doing. They're, hey, we want to do that. But one of the things we've run into is versus a roadway for a 1 year warranty period when you do that walk, you know, no issue a year later with landscaping, depending on who's maintaining it and how it's being done, it can be an issue and you get some finger pointing. So I think city did a great job with applying that contract for a year of maintenance. And so now when we walk through that a year later, it is 100% on the contractor to make sure it's pristine, looks the way it did when we walked it to sell the job and start that warranty period. So no finger pointing. So really appreciate that and good point, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah, you can buy textile. You're right. You can buy textile.
Yeah, I should have raised for that. Our downtown city center project, I really feel like we're getting out of the woods as far as finding underground storage tanks and little surprises there. If you've been down there lately, which you probably hadn't because we got everything closed, but it's really starting to come together. The Turner Behringer project is starting to get complete too, where we're coinciding together. We're actually supposed to pave the section from 4th to 6th this week. They're getting very close to having 4th Street where we'll be paving it early next year. And then really it's going to be that section in front of the Harn Arcadia with that coordination where we can finish that up. Right now we're expecting end of February, 1st of March to be complete. So starting to get out of the woods there. And I think we're to the point where we shouldn't have any more surprises and be asking for any more money. Now, as soon as I say that, we'll find something today. Our Lorraine Avenue extension project, the actual contract completion on that is July of next year. I think we're going to probably beat that by at least 2 months, maybe 3. Emerson Construction is on that. We're about 35 to 40% complete. They're moving really fast out there. Of course, that project is very greenfield. There's no traffic involved with them, and they can just get out there and do what they need to do with lots of laydown area. So completion in July of 25 by contract. I think we're probably going to make March, April with actual completion. Along with that, out in the Synergy Park area, Tower Road waterline, we are complete with that in punch list. So that 16-inch water line is in and feeding Synergy Park. Just punch list items left, and that one will be complete. And then the final one is our Synergy Park wastewater, which will feed that area down there near Panda. Notice to proceed on that was December 9th, so just getting started. That 170 acre service area for wastewater out there for TDC and RZ to develop those properties, and that'll be complete June of 2025. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
The next item I'm going to read in, and then Randall will have a presentation related to it, and Tyler and Tracy will as well. Consider amending the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing project plans for years fiscal year 2026 fiscal year 2030 to allocate funding for a dual certification and service area agreement with Pendleton Water Supply Corporation, Pendleton, for additional 827 acres within Pendleton CCN boundary. Brent?
Good morning. Thank you all. So this item is to request a consideration of a financing plan amendment to address a contract need that we have in furthering the work to expand the industrial park to the north. So right now, the city of Temple has what's called a CCN, or Certificate of Convenience and Necessity, which is really the boundaries in which we are allowed to provide retail water service. So our current boundary, you can see, is this line here. And as this board knows, the area of focus for the reinvestment zone in the city and TDC is up towards from really the outer loop up towards FM 1237 for the expansion of the industrial park. So there's about 827 acres in that priority area that we currently don't have PCN in. It is covered by an existing water provider, which is Pendleton Water Supply Corporation. Pendleton is really set up, and their both their supply and their infrastructure is set up to support retail service provision. So they're really not in the business and have the capacity to meet the needs that of many of our industrial clients that we typically see come to the table. And I know we're hoping to encourage that sort of development in this expansion area as well. So the city would like the opportunity to provide that service just so that we have no barriers to encouraging development in that area and getting the type of capital investment and job creation that we're making these investments for. So we have been negotiating with Pendleton Water Supply Corporation to take on some of their CCN. The way that this is, so you see the area here, it's 827 acres. The way that this proposal is presented is that it would be a dual CCN. So I'll back up just a second. We already share all of this purple area here is already dual CCN with Pendleton, which basically means either the city or Pendleton can serve. And in the absence of an agreement between the two parties, it's really up to the customer who they want to seek service from. So we are presenting this as an expansion to the CCN simply because there is an intention that the city will take primary and will eventually probably be the only service provider within the industrial park, but just to minimize disruption to the existing residential customers in that area during the transition period as that area moves from residential to industrial and commercial, we won't have any disruption in service for those folks. So we've presented as a dual CCN, which just simply means that in the interim, Pendleton will continue to provide service to whoever they're providing service to right now. But as new accounts come on, in particular industrial accounts, the city of Temple will take on that. And we do, along with the agreement to expand our dual CCN, we also have a service agreement that specifies that Temple takes the lead. So it will not be a choice of the customer in these areas. It will be the city of Temple will be the service provider unless we choose to defer to Pendleton for some reason. There is compensation due to Pendleton as part of that negotiated agreement. We have negotiated that out as a total compensation of $2.1 million. And we have agreed to a schedule where we will pay that to them over time. So that would be $420,000, 5 annual installments of $420,000, and that would begin not this fiscal year, but next fiscal year. The dates you have on the screen, I've actually made an adjustment to those so that Tracy will still be my friend and not have the payment due on the first day of a fiscal year. So we're actually moving that to November 1st. But otherwise, that will be the payment schedule. So what we're asking today is that the financing plan is amended to reflect that payment schedule. Again, that first payment would be due November 1st of 2025, which would be in the zone next fiscal year. Tracy, I don't know if you want to say how we're paying for this.
Yes, and just the financing plan amendment, line 63 of your financing plan shows the 5 annual payments of $420,000. And then the source of funding that in 2026, there wasn't sufficient in public improvements. So we did take that from fund balance, but the balance ends at a little over 2.9 million. And then the subsequent 4 years, the 420,000 was funded out of public improvements. And that is line 750, public improvements on your financing plan. So any questions there?
Yeah, just quick comment. Tracy and I have gone through this financing plan this past week just to make sure that we can allocate it, and no other projects are having to move around to accommodate the payment, so it's not like we're delaying a project or moving funds to, do this, so that basically that public improvements line item is, additional fund or a line item that doesn't necessarily have a specific project allocated towards it, and then the fund balance is what we used to call kind of our dry powder, but money that we keep so that when something like this comes up, that we have money to pay for it without having to move a project, so. And, it showed 25, it's always confusing, but this is actually our 2026 calendar or fiscal year on our reinvestment zone budget, so.
And assuming that this is supported and approved by the reinvestment zone, it will go on to city council along with the associated agreement. The agreement would also need to be approved by the Pendleton board, but we have agreed to all material terms. So we anticipate that to occur in January. And then after that, the city of Temple would go through the process with the Public Utilities Commission to actually effectuate the agreement and get the dual CCN authorized through their process. Because this is a consented agreement, this is the fastest path to provide service in this area. If we were to be in a position where we had to do a hostile takeover or some sort of contested agreement, it could take years. So we're very pleased that we were able to negotiate something that we feel like is fair and beneficial to both parties, and we would ask for your support. And this will give us the clearest path to serve that area at the soonest.
Brent, after 2030, there's no renegotiation.
This is it. The only thing would be if we were, in any future additional area that we wanted to consider, which we did, that this, y'all have seen, I'm sure, drafts of the North Industrial Park Master Plan. And so we did look through other areas with them of potential growth areas much farther in the future. So I could see, a potential for both of the parties to come back to the table in the future, but I think this will carry us through many years of development.
We've obviously already got other areas that are currently dual CCNs. In the past, when we've made those adjustments, did we compensate them in any way for those agreements?
No, but I'm not sure of the specific history of how we and who was there first, if they became duly certified with us first, or we were there under a different process. I just by looking at the boundaries without actually having the record of the history, my guess is that our CCN boundaries at some point followed an ETJ line. It's not our current ETJ line, but just the shape of it to me looks like it was a past ETJ line. And there could have been some rule in place, I think this has been in place for decades. So there could have been a rule in place at that time that if a city expanded its ETJ, it automatically got CCN. Under the current rules, we do have the authority to take in CCN, but there is the ability for the other CCN holder to fight that. And that would add a contested process will take years.
On the total amount, the 2.1 million, was that arrived at? Is that some multiple of some number? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, so if you go through the contested process at the PUC, then you're required to do an appraisal that would determine, and there's 9 or 10 different things in the water code that is set out for your review in that, basically evaluation of their water system. So it would look at the value of the lines, the infrastructure that they have in place, the impact to their future customer base, the debt service obligations that they may have. So there's specified criteria for doing that valuation. There's a general, so each particular case, obviously, if you go to that level, is going to be different. And we would get our valuation and they would get theirs, and we would fight about it, just as in, if we were going through a contested process. There's a general rule of thumb of a range per acres that is kind of industry standard, if you will, and that's how we arrived at this number.
But we're not acquiring their lines. We're just acquiring a right to provide service.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. And I guess
if
one,
we went through the contested process, we would be required
Yeah.
to acquire their lines, and we don't need them. Again, they're set up for residential service. We will need to bring from the south up to provide the type of flow and capacity that we'll need for this area. So we don't need their lines, but they'll give them to us.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that's actually where I was going. We don't have any liabilities that come along with this where we have to maintain any infrastructure that, if they had, in their current customer base, if for whatever, they had a failure in a line and, we don't have any liability to go in there and fix it. or-
No, their customers are theirs until, and our customers are ours. And that is why we're presenting it as a dual CCN. Again, the intent and what's written in the draft agreement is the intent is for the city over time to become the sole provider in that area, just as we naturally add infrastructure and as clients in that area switch from residential to industrial. But the current customers will continue to be served by Pendleton, continue to be served off of their infrastructure, and they'll be required to maintain it and provide all that service just as they do today.
You kind of hit on it. I mean, I think this is important for all the land that we're acquiring. I mean, as y'all know, seeing some of the deals that have come through EDC, some of which are, industrial, fairly heavy water users. We try to be diligent about that, but to the extent that we couldn't provide them the utilities, we lose the deal. So you end up with land that's great, but if you can't service the.
It gives a clear path forward for people looking here that, okay, where am I gonna get my water versus a
Right.
potentially contested
And
situation.
time is always of the essence in economic development deal. So if you're telling a client, a potential client that maybe we can figure this out in 3 years, you're not getting that deal.
Yeah, we all of a sudden become not shovel ready, which is what the zone is really, really hard to make sure that all the land that we have is certified and shovel ready, so that when somebody comes in, they can pull the trigger.
Brent, if I recall, when you first started looking at this a year ago, 2 years ago, and we started discussions, various committees we had, the board, the EDC and project committee and all this was at one time talked about much larger, and then it just became focused on what we actually know. Is that not correct? I think some of the original maps that were shown months ago.
Yeah, we've talked through with Pendleton, just wanting to be transparent, not because they're making decisions on how they're what they're going to invest in. So, we talked through, you're right, we talked through, whether, because in some versions of planning documents, I could see this area also eventually becoming industrial. And then also just what their preferences are in terms of right now, they're almost exclusively a provider for, very rural, large lot residential. So when you see, even in this area, not within their CCN, but very close, you see some more dense residential proposals coming to the table. Just, talking through with them, whether that's something that they are, going to be capable of serving or not. From my perspective, it is, as long as, a neighboring water supply corporation has the capacity to provide service to our residential growth areas and in particular fire flow protection, then it's not a bad thing for us to work with them so they continue to provide service in this area. It just helps us have more water to provide to our growing areas. And again, I could, I don't think that it would be any issue in the future for us to come back to the table with Pendleton if there's another area that we want to look at in the future. But I think this first 827 acres takes the priority area and will, I don't want to make any predictions because things happen faster than sometimes you think they will. And, I would be pleased as all get out if you told me 5 years from now we need some more land because we filled this one up with industrial clients. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think this will give us plenty of growth room for our industrial part. But I think that the negotiations and the relationship with Pendleton remains strong, and through this negotiation, and that if we were interested in expansion in the future, that they would be open to that as well.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? I've already read it in, so we have a motion for item number 3. Motion McCracken. Lacy. Second. Any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, number 4, I'll read it in, and also Lynn will be presenting this. Consider a recommendation of the city council to authorize the establishment of public safety services assessment for residential areas within the boundaries of the Temple Tax Increment Finance and Reinvestment Zone number 1.
Thank you. So we talked a little bit about this last meeting when you all adopted update to the financing plan that included a line for this. But this is actually the policy document that would establish the program that we discussed. So just as a refresher, this is proposed as a public safety assessment fee for residential properties that are within the reinvestment zone. Property taxes, as you all know, the way that reinvestment zone works is that the property taxes are the increment above the property tax that was established when the zone was established at its inception, goes into the reinvestment zone for real property and goes to the participating taxing entities for personal property. However, for residential property, there really isn't any personal property taxes that are associated with residential development. So 100% of the taxes associated with those land uses go into the reinvestment zone fund. We have seen over the last couple of years, and I think we're projected in the next few years to see a more concentration of residential developments happening within the zone than say 10, 15 years ago. We've really started to see whereas the zone was almost exclusively industrial at that point, we have seen areas kind of particularly on the fringes, but also in some of the core areas, land develop out as residential and not industrial. So what this proposed assessment would do would calculate the amount of taxes that are paid for City of Temple tax levy and would set those aside in a dedicated fund for public safety services within the reinvestment zone. The city would provide those services. This would be a restricted allocation, so it would just go towards police and fire protection within the reinvestment zone. The funding for the increment from the other taxing entities would continue to be allocated to the reinvestment zone for future investment in infrastructure and more traditional investments of the reinvestment zone. This would be calculated annually. It would be the specific number would be determined by the actual levy. So it's not an estimate, it's actually the calculated by our finance team annually, and we are proposing a 3-year sunset review where we would evaluate the need for this to continue.
A 3-year sunset review, or this agreement is good for 3 years. Those are two different things.
It's not an agreement because the reinvestment zone is not an entity. So we and I may have said agreement when we last spoke at the last meeting, and if I did, I apologize. This is presented really as a policy document, a resolution that the council would adopt because we can't enter into agreements with ourselves. So it's a policy that would have a 3-year sunset review.
So that means unless action is taken, it continues in perpetuity?
No, the opposite.
Okay.
Sunset review means it sunsets unless action is taken, not the other way around.
Okay. Good. Wanted that clarity.
Sure.
Okay. Will the zone be provided any annual recap? There's going to be an annual calculation on the amount allocated for this. Will we also get an annual recap of the use of the funds, of the expenditures?
Yes, it would be provided in the annual report.
And I think, and we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, but you know, one of the things that came out of the last meeting was one having a sunset on there is, this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but it's also, you know, I think Tracy, the number was like 24% of the property within the zone is now single family use. And so, but Gary, to your point, like part of having the sunset was as the zone starts doing more projects outside of the zone, we just kind of went over, you know, some of the investments that we're making would start producing, you know, city captured revenue that, so in at least the thought process behind it was, you know, a 3-year period probably allows some of that to mature and you might equal out. So.
I think that's a good process. I mean, I think the concern or the caution I have is if we begin to allow individual taxing entities to say, well, I want to allocate my portion to X. I mean, you think about TISD, the amount of increment that's coming from TISD, if they suddenly decided, well, we'd like to see ours used for a specific project.
Yeah.
That could really be problematic overall. So I think
Yeah.
the ability to look at that in 3 years is really important.
Yeah.
And to that point, Gary, when we look at TISD, they're made whole.
Mhm.
And with this, the concentration of residential development within the zone and the demand for services related to that, for police, fire, public safety, we're not made whole on that. And that was
Yeah.
how we got to this too.
Yeah.
There are other options, but they're more detrimental to the zone. So this is what we're presenting as, I think, a good option for that allows the zone to continue to do what it has done very successfully
Mhm.
and not hamper our ability to provide police and fire services in those residential areas.
Good question. Any additional comments, questions? Okay, if not, consider a motion for item number 4 that's already been read in.
Right.
Vote.
Vote.
Second, Tyler. Any discussion, additional discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, number 5 is consider recommendation to city council for approval of the annual report of the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 for the year ending September 30, 2020. Tracy?
Thank you. I'm pleased to present the annual report for the reinvestment zone for the year ended September 30th. I'll go over some highlights of the board meetings, what were action items, source of funds, use of funds, what we call our carry forwards, outstanding bonds, and historical investment in infrastructure. Just to recap the board meetings for the past year, y'all recommended approval of 19 design and professional services contracts for a total of 5.1 million. We had recommended approval of 7 construction contracts and change orders totaling 51.8 million. And just to highlight the outer ring, phase 3 from Woodland to I-35, 42.6 million. The Synergy Park, Lorraine Avenue and utility improvements, 3.5 million. Santa Fe Community Market, 3.4, and South Temple Tower Road waterline improvements, 1.8. There was also 5 financing plan amendments during the year. Looking at revenues, total revenues for the reinvestment zone were $39.3 million. The budget was a little over 38 million. Looking at taxes from increment, it shows we're about 300,000, a little less than 300,000 short. But we actually have a bigger taxpayer that paid late, and we won't get that till May of 2025. So if that was on board, you would have collected more than your budget. And then looking at interest income, we started the year with, I think, over $100 million in bond proceeds. This year we earned $4.9 million on that, on those funds, exceeded our budget 1.4 million. But a portion of that 1.4 million is subject to arbitrage, and later in the plan, I'll show how we reserve that. And then the Patriot Rail license fee, 322,000. We had a budget of 150. So a positive variance of a little over 1.2 million. Looking at the source of funds from increment taxes by taxing entity, the total 29.5 million, 53, little over 53% from Temple ISD, almost 22% from the city, Bell County, almost 11%, the college, 7.6, Troy ISD. And I won't read through the rest. Use of funds total, and this is by the higher level categories. Public improvements, actual expenditure during the year was 49 million. Looking at debt service, we had 11.4 million. The total expenditures during the year were 65.7 million. And again, I won't go over each one of those line items, but note that this, compared to budget, there's 58.5 million remaining. That rolls over into the next FY 2025 as those projects continue. Kind of drilling down in the use of funds, public improvements, downtown improvements. You can see expended were close to 4.2 million. Gateway projects, outer loop, 20.5 million on that contract. Synergy Park, 6.7. Airport improvements, TMed. And then there was also advanced to EDC and the land committee, an additional 10.5 million for land purchases. Change in fund equity for the reinvestment zone. Again, the beginning balance was over 101 million. Total sources, 39.3 million. Total uses, 65.7. We did have the other financing sources of 1.7 million that will go toward Veterans Memorial. And so we actually had a decrease in fund balance, leaving the balance at 77 million at the end of the year. Fund balance projection, we start with 77 million. And this is where we had the new reserve for arbitrage. We had the reserve for debt service, a sinking fund. And then we have the net carry forwards of 58.5 million. And then there's also fund balance allocated to 25 projects of 9.3 million. So in the year at 2.6. In your packet, we show in the financing plan, we show the adopted for 24. We show the actual amounts for FY 24. And then we show this 58.5 million of how we roll those funds forward for the adopted, and then add it to the adopted financing plan for FY 2025 to end up with the revised financing plan in column E. Looking at the outstanding debt for the reinvestment zone, principal outstanding is $168.8 million. Interest payable over the life of that debt is 83.2 million, for a total of 252 million. And close to 53% of that will be retired within 10 years. Looking at the historical investment infrastructure, this is amazing of what the reinvestment zone has invested. Land that's not depreciated, or capital assets not depreciated, 73.1 million. Depreciated assets, 147.8, for a total of 221 million. And from 23 to 24, you still have a big portion in construction in progress, but it increased that by 29 million. And I'd be happy to take any questions, comments.
Tracy, what happens with the, we can talk about it after this if we need to, but the arbitrage reserve, where does that go?
We actually pay it back to the IRS.
I have thought of that. maybe we can talk about.
Yeah.
Another way to handle that.
Restricted yield.
Well, yeah, but we could talk. And then, can you go back a couple more, sorry. On. Yeah, so the land committee, the TDC land committee, just for clarification, that functionally was a loan. So the zone, it wasn't a grant, or it wasn't, we've done money that way as a establishing land fund. But that particular one, just for the board's sake, was a loan, and it actually has worked and is, in the process, probably, there's a pathway to get paid back for the next 12 months, so.
Yes, and we've actually factored that into the
Yeah.
financing plan.
So, but that was a very successful program that we're likely gonna hopefully replicate in the event that when that does get paid back, or if there's additional land purchases that need to be made in a timely manner, we'll probably replicate it.
Once this is approved and approved by the council, then you present this to each of the taxing entities, correct?
Yes, and it also, we have to send it to the state. There's some reporting we do with them.
We encourage everyone to retain this document and just keep handy. It's really a good source of everything we do in a year and summarized in one place, so. Good reference document. So thank you very much. Anyone have any more questions? Not, do I have a motion for item number 5? Already been read in.
Motion approved.
Okay. Second. Additional discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next item is receive update from the Temple Economic Development Corporation. Adrian is on vacation, so we're not gonna have one. And then Rand, update from city manager.
Good morning again. So I do have a few capital updates, if I can read them here in the dark. Focusing again on projects that are not funded by the reinvestment zone that David didn't go over this morning. So a couple of projects, well, first, a project under construction, Outer Loop West Phase 1 is well underway. We anticipate completion in the summer, probably May of 2025. In that same general area, we are about to kick off South Pea Ridge improvements. We anticipate issuing the notice to proceed for that project first week in January. So that will begin very soon. Completion of that project will be in the spring, probably March of 2026. Also in that same general area, North Pea Ridge, so improvements north of Adams, will begin very soon. We've actually already executed the contract for that project, so it's imminent start. That's an 18-month timeline for completion. In other areas of the community, we have North 42nd Street. That's under design right now. We're about 95% design. We're underway with right-of-way acquisition. We've got most of the parcels. I think we have 16 or 17 out of the 19 that we need. So we're well underway there. Next step for that project is dry utility relocations, which we anticipate could take somewhere between 6 and 9 months to move telecommunications, electric, and other lines out of the way before we get started. So then construction will follow that completion. Nugent Avenue improvements are also under design. They're at 60%. And so we're hoping to start that project in the summer. There's only some minor right-of-way associated with that project. Hartrick Bluff in South.
Nugent, what does that involve?
It's a road improvements, roundabout. I don't think that there's also a dog park being, so, there's Hillcrest Cemetery and there's some land that the city owns between Hillcrest and the road. We're going to be building a dog park there for North Temple. I can't remember if we're going to do that as two separate projects, but they're all kind of one
Combining.
The authority on the source has spoken. So, and also probably we're evaluating we're fighting out internally whether we're going to have a detention pond or retention pond. And whether that's going to be located on the site of the dog park or located on Hillcrest. You may recall that we're doing a master plan for Hillcrest Cemetery right now. So really kind of looking at the long-term land use there and which roads and what we need infrastructure-wise there. So for what it's worth, I'm a proponent of a retention pond. So there's a nice water feature on Hillcrest Cemetery property. We'll see who wins. We'll report back. Partridge Bluff is, we are in the phase of dry utility relocations. We hope to bid that in the spring, February or March. That project will go out to bid. We're also be bidding in that same time frame, Poison Oak Road Phase 2 improvements, which will get us back over to the outer loop, which I think we're all looking forward to. As we turn our attention to utilities, our major project for the year, the Temple Belton wastewater treatment plant. Some good news, we do have design approval from TCEQ, so that was a big milestone. The project is now bidding. We anticipate that we will be awarding a contract in March, and then probably construction will commence in May of next year. That is planned to be completed in the fall of 2027. And obviously that is a huge project for the community. That's our one of two wastewater treatment plants, serves a good portion of our community, including areas in our North Industrial Park. So that is an important project for from the reinvestment zones perspective, again, as we attract industrial users in that area to make sure we have the capacity to serve them. As this group knows, that is a facility that's jointly owned between the cities of Temple, which owns 75%, and the city of Belton, which owns 25%. So that's a significant project. I think the OPC is $68 million. So one of our larger ones. Also, a significant project as it relates to utilities is improvements to the Avenue G pump station, which are well underway, going well, and will be completed in the spring. I'm hoping March of 2025. That's a major pump station, major component in our complete water system. But of note for the reinvestment zone is important to getting additional water to Synergy Park as we're looking at new investments in that area. And that, of course, is not the major project. The major project to get significant amounts of additional water is the South Temple water line that you all have under design right now. But the Avenue G certainly is an important component to the overall system and will provide some more immediate relief in that area. And then finally, last but not least, a project that has literally been ongoing since I have been here. We are going to finish Bird Creek Trunk Sewer Line, and it is all but done. So that was a 5-phase project, and we are on the last phase, which is going through the most disruptive portion, going through the Bird Creek and other residential developments that are have been very patient with us. So I know everyone is excited to see that major project complete. I think I don't know, I'll have to learn a new factoid because I think right now it is the oldest purchase order open for the city of Temple, the engineering contract for that, because it was open when I started here in 2008. So we are very excited to have that project complete. And those are the project updates I had today.
Quick update question. I had a couple people ask, I don't know the answer on the ASR. Is that operational or are we close to that being operational?
The well, yes. The ASR portion, no. So just as a reminder, we have taken the primary reason or the time sensitive reason that we drilled that well is to provide production water for Synergy Park clients. And so, but because we were drilling a well in that area and we really, and I always want to give David credit for this because it was his great idea, that also was an area identified in our ASR report that we did regionally as a very significant area viable for ASR. So we
And
did
ASR is.
aquifer storage and recovery. So meaning taking water, whether that's, and we'll talk about this in just a second, but taking other water, putting it in the aquifer, storing it there, and then being able to pull it up and use it during times of high need. So we designed the well to be both a production well and an ASR well. And in terms of where is the water going to come from, we also designed the well to be able to accept more traditional, straightforward path of injecting treated potable water. So from our water treatment plant, so times like December, when we're all not watering our lawns, we typically have more treatment capacity at the plant than we have real-time usage within the system. So during those times, we could keep our treatment higher and send more water to Synergy Park, which we could then store in the aquifer. That process is fairly straightforward and should be operational, within the next 6 months. The other component of that, though, is our ability to store treated effluent from both of our wastewater treatment plant, which is very meaningful because it opens up a new water source. So, think about the treated water at the plant is a great, and we should do that. And I'm glad that we have that moving forward. But that is dipping in, if you will, to the water rights that we have out of Lake Belton, whereas the effluent creates basically a new source of water because you've used it out of Lake Belton, you've treated it, and then you can use it again. That is going to take either some legislative or regulatory work. We are asking council to hire a consulting firm next week that specializes in working with TCEQ and the EPA to get us through that process. So that is a kind of a nuanced, the production side is almost done. Being able to fully use the ASR is still a ways out, both from a regulatory hurdles, but also the infrastructure that we would need to put in place to fully realize that. But the part that we have constructed in conjunction with the Temple Green Data Project is done to allow us to move forward with that project when we have the correct approvals in place.
In addition to that, there can be opportunity for, due to the large production of this, or success of this water well, there's going to be a well field, another 3 or 4 wells that can be drilled out there, identifying. I think y'all done some preliminary work on identifying those areas that will then also help be another water source for Synergy Park.
Yes, it's a very, it's a good well, and we're very happy with it, and we anticipate the ability to, and we reserve the land needed to develop out a well field there. That, and, and we could, or I guess maybe I could talk about water all day. You probably don't want to, but there are other, the Trinity Aquifer is never going to be our savior here. But it is an important component in the overall strategy for water resources. So, it's not prolific like the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer. There's certainly limits to the amount of water. But I think you have to, we as a community have to look at multiple sources and multiple strategies to prepare for water needs in the future, including maximizing treatment of potable water. Our current, I say potable water, surface water is what I mean, out of our existing water rights in Lake Belton and the run of the river rights that we have. I think we should maximize those, which this well helps us do as we have excess treatment capacity during times of lower use. But we also need to look at maximizing ASR technology, reuse water, drilling wells for production, and then ultimately probably looking at water resources from other groundwater.
Thank you. Another thing that's been the key to this, I guess, somewhat out of this board, maybe, and certainly TEDC, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, conversations about preserving the water rights on the land that, we sell to industrial customers, and we've been, whether the agreement's been retaining water rights at least, I guess, for the last 10 years, maybe, for certainly some period of time. Just kind of forward thinking and not knowing at the time what the water conditions were, but just said if there are opportunities that would have that up, and that obviously opportunities been presented and very productive wells, so.
In our district, our water conservation district is not a correlative rights district. So again, y'all don't want to talk about that right now, but maybe another day.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional questions for Brent? Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you all for everything you do for the community, all the service and time and hours you spend to make our community great. Appreciate it.
Can I give a quick update too before we move on?
Yes.
Can't believe we didn't address that.
I'm sorry.
No, this is an update. I think it's a significant
Oh my goodness, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
project, not so much in money spent, but in interest, and has also, I think, been in effect since the whole time I've been here, which is only 5 years as opposed to Brent, but downtown lighting. We do have a phase 2 that is being installed as we speak. I think they started yesterday on City Hall because they were drilling above my office. So that the interim phase 2 includes City Hall, the library building, historic post office, Main Street from Adams to Central, and Central from Main to South First, the 4th Street garage. We intended to include the First Street garage, but because the top is open and people could just reach the lighting, it was decided that wasn't a good candidate for that type of lighting. And so they're going to do flood lighting or uplighting instead, and that'll occur after the first of the year. Also, after the first of the year, we're going to, it was a little chaotic the way it had been working, just piecemealing all over the city, and then we would get an agreement and then the business would change hands, and it just felt like we were always going in circles. So I think we're going to take a more methodical approach and try to do block by block and move out that way, with the hope that we could do the final phase 3 by the late summer timeframe. That is our goal. So I know that this has been a project that's been very near and dear to this committee's heart. So I did want to let you know that we are moving forward, and there should be Christmas lighting up in at least part of downtown.
Thank you. Yes, well, I mean, probably, no, that started the Leadership Temple project probably 7 or 8 years ago. And then obviously there wasn't funding for it, and then looked around for funding, they found the, and we took it on as a project, and so we're happy to see it going.
So am I.
Okay, next meeting is scheduled for January 22nd. And so that's all of our business today. I agree with Glenn. Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you for your service. A great year and lots of good stuff going on.